If your business is earning under 75k, you're not required to register for GST in Australia. You still can choose to, but why would you choose to register when you don't need to? Well, sometimes it actually makes sense to voluntarily register for GST even when you're earning below the 75k threshold. And in this video, I'm going to show you why. A lot of people have gone out and started a side hustle or a little business on the side. Perhaps it started out as a hobby and it's now starting to become a little bit more serious, or maybe you're actively trying to build up a second source of income, or you're trying to get into a position where you can quit your job. Well, at some point you're going to have to give some thought as to whether you want to register and whether you have to register for GST. There are a few reasons when you would be required to register for GST, and these include when your business turnover is over $75,000 a year, or you expect it to be over $75,000 a year. If you're a not-for-profit and you expect to be earning or will be earning over $150,000 a year. If you're a taxi service, and this includes ride-sharing services like Uber, you have to register from day one. Or if you're claiming fuel tax credits, you need to register as well. First, I'm going to discuss some situations in which it would make sense to register for GST. Then we'll look at some situations where it does not make sense to register for GST. And then stick around to the end of the video and we'll go over some things you need to be wary of if you do decide to register for GST. Most products that we buy in the general economy do have GST attached to them. Not everything does. For instance, healthcare, education, and groceries. These things don't have GST, but the vast majority of things we buy in day-to-day life do. Now that means that the price of a normal item, instead of being, say, $1, it has a 10% GST levied on top of it. So $1 becomes $1.10. And it's 10% no matter what the price is. So that means whenever you buy something, you are paying an extra 10% in GST. Well, when you're registered for GST as a business, that means whenever you buy something that has GST on it, you don't have to pay that anymore because you're going to get that back when you lodge your BAS. That means by being registered for GST, you'll automatically get a 10% discount on just about everything you buy, as long as it's not one of the items that are excluded from the GST system. If you're currently in business but you're not registered for GST and you have an upcoming big expense, a big purchase that you're thinking about undertaking, such as a new car or maybe an expensive laptop or some new equipment, then you might want to think about registering for GST. Because if you're going to buy a new car, say for $50,000, and that car was going to be 100% business use and you're going to buy it in the business name, that means you can get your 10% GST credit on the purchase. So that $50,000 car now becomes about a $45,000 car. So you're going to save about $5,000 or a little bit less of GST on that. So that's a pretty nice saving. If you're going to buy a new laptop, say the laptop's $2,200, well, that $2,200 becomes $2,000 because you take the 10% off. So that's a $200 saving right there. Or maybe you're going to buy like an $11,000 piece of equipment. Well, that $11,000 piece of equipment would have $1,000 GST. So once you claim that credit back in your BAS, you're only going to be paying $10,000. So that's a $1,000 discount there. If you're just starting up a new business and you don't want to register for GST because you don't have to and you don't want the headache and the extra hassle that goes with it, well, the thing is, when you're starting a new business, a lot of businesses, they all have a lot of startup costs. And a lot of these startup costs will have GST on it. So if you're expecting that you're going to have to invest a lot of money or a decent amount of money to get that business up and running in the early days for equipment, and maybe, I don't know, paying a lawyer or accountants, whatever it may be, products, then a lot of this stuff will have GST on it. So if you register from day one, that means you're going to get 10% back on all of this stuff because you won't be paying GST on it. Again, if you're just starting out in a new business, you might be a one-person show, you might be working from your bedroom, but your customers don't know that. Well, maybe they do know that, because when you send an invoice, you have to put on your invoice whether there is GST on it or whether it is a non-GST registered sale. So if you're not registered for GST, they know that when you invoice them. The thing is, when you have on your invoice that you're not registered for GST, your customers will know straight away that you are earning below $75,000 a year. And that's fine, there's nothing wrong with that. But perhaps you want to present an image of a business that's more established. You don't necessarily want your customers to know that you're earning below $75,000 a year, that you're a startup, that you're a small business that doesn't make a lot of money in the scheme of things. You might want people to think that you're earning more than $100,000 a year, just to give a bit of a sense of legitimacy around your business. Well, if you do choose to register for GST, then straight away, because you're invoicing, your customers have no idea whether you're earning above or below $75,000 a year. And maybe that's what you want to do, just to provide that sense of legitimacy to your business, to make it look that maybe you're professional, you know what you're doing, and you're not necessarily just like some guy working out of their bedroom. Now, in the last year, 18 months, there's been a lot of government support for businesses around Australia, and some of the government support, particularly around the state grants, has had a clause in there that to be eligible that you must be registered for GST. And there were people that would have otherwise been eligible for a lot of state government grant money that weren't able to get it because they weren't registered for GST. So that's a small reason. It's probably not the main reason to do it, because hopefully we won't have any further need for these grants going forward, but it is something that held some businesses back and left them out of pocket. If most of your customers are other businesses, that means that most of your customers, because they are other businesses, will likely be registered for GST themselves. That means when you register for GST and you add that 10% onto your invoice, so your prices essentially go up by 10%, your business customers, they won't get a price hike from you because they will be getting that credit, that 10% that you put on your invoice, they get a credit for when they lodge their BAS, so they're not having to front up any more cash to pay for your services. So that's a good thing. It means that your prices aren't going up, they're staying the same essentially, even though you're levying that extra 10% on top of your normal price. All right, so now let's look at some reasons why you would not choose to voluntarily register for GST. So just on the flip side of that last point, if your businesses are mostly individuals, so that means they would not be registered for GST, that would mean your $100 service now becomes $110. So that means you're pretty much putting up your prices by 10% to your customers, even though you don't get to keep that extra 10%. So if you're in a business that has a sensitive price point and maybe you're trying to build it and you don't want to put up your prices 10% to your customer, and most of your customers are individuals and not businesses who could claim the credits, well, this might be a reason why you would not choose to register for GST. When you do register for GST, your admin burden is going to go up a little bit, especially if you're doing everything in-house. That means if you're running a spreadsheet to do your bookkeeping, you're going to now have to track your GST in your spreadsheet, which is totally possible to do, not too hard at all, but it is some more work that you might have to put in. If spreadsheets aren't really your thing, it might mean you're going to have to move to a paid subscription to track your GST. It also means you're actually going to have to lodge the actual BAS return. If you're under 75K, you should be able to do this annually. Most businesses, however, do it quarterly, but it's a few more things that you have to think about when you're running the back-end admin of your business. And there could be some more cost to this as well. So if you are someone who doesn't want to do the books yourself, maybe you're paying an accountant or paying a bookkeeper, you're going to have to pay them to do your BAS every quarter or every year. So it might not be a huge cost, but it might be something. You would hope that the credits that you claim back on your purchases would more than outweigh any extra costs that you would have to pay to lodge your BAS statements. The other thing is as well, if you're not using a spreadsheet system, maybe a spreadsheet system was fine before, but now that you're registered for GST and you weren't confident in Excel, you wanted to move to a paid subscription for your bookkeeping, this might be an extra cost to you as well. Again, moving to a paid subscription will normally create its own efficiencies, so it should pay for itself in the long run, really, with the time you get back without having to spend so much time doing the books every night, but it is still something you have to consider. Now let's look at some of the things that you have to be careful of when you do choose to register for GST. The first thing I'll mention here is you have to be very careful that when you add the GST onto your sales price, your invoice price, that 10%, you need to add it on top of what you're already normally charging. So if you charge $100 for a particular service to your customer, you need to now charge $100 plus $10 GST, which equals $110. Don't just change it to $100 including GST, because that means you're effectively giving yourself a 10% pay cut. So just make sure that you add the GST onto whatever you're already normally charging. Okay, you need to be wary of the fact that when you collect 10% on top of your invoice price as GST, that is not your money. That is money that goes to the tax office. Yes, you do get to keep the GST on purchases, but the GST on sales, you have to remit back to the tax office. So when this extra money is coming into your bank account, you don't want to fall for the trap of thinking that everything in your bank account is your money that you can spend on your business or that you can withdraw as a wage. Because if you do that, when it comes to, if you've had a good quarter and you lodge your BAS and you have a GST bill because you've made a lot of sales, more sales than purchases, which you would hope to do if you're making a profit, of course, well then, if you've gone out and spent all your money that has come in from GST, you won't have enough money to pay your BAS. So you're going to be in trouble there. You're going to have to go on a payment plan with the tax office. So you got to make sure when this money comes in, this 10% on top of your normally invoiced price, you got to put that money aside and just make sure, be wary of the fact that it's not your money, that you're just custodian of that money for a period of time until you remit your BAS. An easy way to get around this little problem is to open a second bank account, commonly called a GST account. And this would just mean whenever you make a sale, say for $110, you might put that $10 into the GST account. You could probably put a little bit less when you factor in the GST credits on your purchases, but if you wanted to be very safe, you might put in that $10 into a second bank account, and then knowing that when you do pay your BAS, that money is sitting there in that second bank account ready to go to the tax office. You're not going to accidentally spend it on wages. You're not going to actually accidentally spend it on some new equipment or whatever it may be, and you won't get caught short when it comes to tax time. Okay, so if you do at some point choose to register, there will be a changeover date from the day when you were not registered to the day when you were registered, and your reporting to the tax office will change from that day. So to make it easy on you, if you're doing your books, to make it easy on your accountant, set that date on the first day of a quarter. So if the quarter, if it's currently, say, in December, you might set the GST registration date on the 1st of January, the first day of the next quarter. Now, if you don't want to wait till the next quarter, set it on the first day of the next month. So it's just nice and clean. Then your accountant or you can run a report from a whole month being the next month and know that that whole month is related to GST in your BAS, and anything previous is not related to GST. It'll make your reporting and your BAS bookkeeping a little bit easier. Now, when you do register for GST, try and get everything set up straight away as far as your back-end processes and systems go. If you're running your books on a spreadsheet, you're gonna have to make some edits to your spreadsheet so that you can now account for GST. Do that straight away, so it's not something that sort of you fall behind on at the end of the quarter. Same thing if you're going to move to a paid subscription, get it set up early so that you can have everything done early and not have a mad rush at the end of the quarter when you realize that you have to lodge a BAS and you haven't done any bookkeeping, you haven't set up any of your systems, and then you could potentially get a fine for lodging late. The deadline for lodging your BAS is the 28th day after the end of the quarter. So for the Jan to March quarter, you have to lodge your BAS by the 28th of April. If you're using an accountant, you do get an extension on that, but there is a deadline there still. So you don't really want to leave things too late and make things harder for you than it has to be. If you do have a growing business and you expect that you probably will have to register for GST, then it might be a good idea to register now, get all your systems and processes in place now before your business gets more complex, before you have less time, so that you can just move forward knowing that you're all set up into the future and you can claim some of those GST credits on the way. But of course, if you're below the threshold, then it is voluntary. So you absolutely do not have to do it if you would prefer not to and you think it is better for your business. Now, if you do want to register and you're not sure how to go about it with the registration process itself, but also getting your bookkeeping systems in a place where they can cater for GST, and you're looking for some help to do it, check out the link in the description. We got a link there to an accounting service that can provide you with some help there. Other than that, guys, that's about it for the video. If you're interested in business and tax and want to learn more about that, please feel free to subscribe. If you're also interested in money and personal finance, we do a lot of videos on that kind of stuff as well. So subscribe for all that good stuff. If you learned anything at all in the video, I really would appreciate if you could hit the like button. Other than that, guys, thanks a lot for watching. I hope I did help, and hopefully we'll see you in the next one.